From the headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador, I'm Carla Gonzalez, and this is From the South. We begin in Grenada, where voting is underway for the general election. The election involves 45 candidates from 2 major parties and 7 minor parties. There are also 2 independent candidates. By most accounts, this is really a fight between the new National Party, led by incumbent Prime Minister Keith Mitchell, and the opposition National Democratic Congress, led by Nazim Burke.
It is indeed a pleasure for me to be here tonight.
The Caribbean Community Election Observer Mission is on board to ensure fair and transparent elections. It says it has spoken to all the key stakeholders. It will also closely follow the opening of the polls, right through the announcement of the results. The polls will close at 5 p.m. local time in Grenada on Tuesday. Here's a look at what is at stake.
45 candidates are vying for 15 seats in the Grenadian Parliament. Prime Minister Dr. Keith Mitchell is ahead in the polls. If he wins, he could cement his place in history as one of the longest-serving Caribbean leaders. Dr. Mitchell has ruled for more than 2 decades, though not continuously. His new National Party won 6 of 8 general elections in the past 34 years. In the 2013 election, they won all 15 seats contested, the second time in Grenada's history.
We believe that our strongest currency is hope, and the NNP has bring hope to all of you in Grenada, Carriacou and Petit Martinique.
Mitchell is running on the platform of continued economic growth and not changing leadership at a time when the country is on the cusp of perhaps a major economic breakthrough with the discovery of oil in an exploratory well.
It means a lot for the future of this country. Sisters and brothers, one well. We have several more wells which are even more exciting than the one they just found. In other words, Grenada can be a massive supplier of oil and gas. With God's blessing, sisters and brothers, we will be marching on to victory, sisters and brothers.
The main opposition, National Democratic Congress, is led by Nazim Burke. His campaign promises call for better infrastructure, better healthcare, small business growth, and growth in the tourism and agro-processing industries.
The desire to stick with the substance is a necessary requirement for the development of our country. Anybody could get on a stage and whine if they want. But sisters and brothers, when you come to talk about the needs of our people, you must know what you're talking about.
On March 13, 1979, Maurice Bishop, leader of Grenada's left-wing New Jewel movement, led a revolution and seized power from Sir Eric Gairy. Successive governments since then haven't seen this date as something to celebrate. So the real intent behind setting this general election to coincide with the anniversary is confusing to many analysts, especially as it's the second time Prime Minister Keith Mitchell has chosen the date to hold an election. The first was around 28 years ago. Already some Grenadians have taken to the polls. Police officers voted on Friday. Most of them reported a smooth process. Election observers from the OAS and CARICOM have been in the country for a few days monitoring the situation on the ground.
Earlier we spoke to Mikey Hutchinson, a talk show host in Grenada, about the main issues surrounding this election and whether the opposition has a fighting chance.
Availability of adequate healthcare facilities throughout the island. That has been a challenge for many governments, not just this current one, but for those in the past. And so many are looking forward to seeing that at least we place a lot of attention on healthcare. So I know that for both parties, they have been talking about somehow improving our healthcare situation here. Whether or not we're going to see that very soon, that's left to be seen. In the past 2 weeks, the National Democratic Congress have gained significant momentum with their campaign, particularly their social media campaign. They have been doing really good with that. There's also caution to the Prime Minister and his team with regards to the confidence that they would have and how that would inspire or not persons to come out on the polls that they've been warned against that by Peter Wickham and other experts who say that, hey, given the fact that your party would have won elections with all the seats, it gives you sometimes the unrealistic expectation that, hey, I could do this again, and probably you will not push as hard as you need to, and even you will not get your people to come out as they should. So you should not be too complacent. And whether or not they have been complacent, I don't know. Some are saying that they have put up a really good fight and they stand a really good chance of getting all 15 seats again. If you ask me, I'm not sure about that.
In Colombia, the National Liberation Army, the ELN, has announced that President Juan Manuel Santos will resume peace talks in Quito, suspended since last January 10. In an official statement, the guerrilla group warned about the extreme right-wing influence in the Colombian government as the main obstacle to reaching peace. The ELN confirmed its willingness to discuss renewing a bilateral ceasefire, as did President Santos.
When you think about how many lives could be saved through achieving a complete peace agreement for Colombia, I have decided to restart the peace talks with the ELN, the National Liberation Army. To that end, I've given instructions to the chief of the negotiator team, Gustavo Bell, to travel to Quito and begin the talks.
News of these talks came just a day after Colombians went to the polls. Unfortunately, it was an election marked with allegations of fraud and injustice, prompting calls for reform in the country's electoral system.
The National Congress will continue to be ruled by political elites, traditional parties, and the right wing, according to Sunday's elections results.
There was no renovation in the Congress. Around 90% of the old one remains, but with little changes in the distribution of the seats, divided into parties Cambio Democrático, Cambio Radical, the Conservative Party, the Liberals, and the U Party.
The party Cambio Radical has been questioned after links tied many of its members with corruption cases and paramilitarism. They now have twice the number of members they had in legislative power. Uribe's party, Centro Democrático, will have more representatives too. Analysts warn that this might have serious consequences for the peace agreement.
This will mean a great obstacle for legislative development. For example, problems for integral agrarian reform or for guarantees and political participation processes, which are very important in the final agreement with the FARC.
Status quo stays the same for political elites, but alternative and progressive forces got stronger.
We had 26 Congress members from alternative sectors. Now we have 42, including the 10 places offered to FARC in the peace agreement. I think that this Congress has a lot of challenges. The first one in talking to the country. I think that Congress has always turned its back to the people. They betray in some way the expectations people have.
The new Congress has some real challenges ahead. They still have to apply more than 80% of the peace agreements and advance the justice, political, and integral agrarian reforms. The road won't be easy. An important sector of Congress is still controlled by corruption and controversial members.
And we spoke to Jose Antonio Figueroa, who teaches at the Central University here in Quito, and asked him about the Colombia's right to judge Venezuela's election.
Colombia plays a very important role in its alliance with the USA. So all the time they are going to be speaking against Venezuela instead of the fact that Venezuela has been doing a lot of elections in a very clear way, in a very right way, but it has to do with the play that Colombia is, in this moment is having in the regional, in the international arena, in the regional arena, as the stronger ally with of the USA.
And Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro has cast doubt about Colombia's electoral process. The president questioned how his Colombian counterpart could criticize Venezuela when his own system is fraught with corruption.
¿Ustedes vieron las elecciones de Colombia ayer?
Have you seen the Colombian elections? Santos only speaks about electoral guarantees, and when you see the electoral system in Colombia, you feel shame. Colombia was shouting, fraud, fraud. All the candidates screamed fraud. It's unbelievable. There was a 70% abstention rate.
Maduro made this comment while commemorating the second anniversary of the Local Food and Production Committees, the CLAP, a social program aimed at distributing food to the Venezuelan people. The event held in Caracas paid tribute to this social program that was initiated to counter the economic blockade imposed by the United States and its allies. This boycott fueled shortages in food and medicine in Venezuela and promoted the black market. Maduro stressed the importance of CLAP as a tool to secure supplies for the Venezuelan people despite the external attacks.
The local food and production committees have to be a tool for the power of our people, a new power aimed to create conscience, to create organization, and to fight our economic battle. CLAP is the great instrument to neutralize the economic war and to win, in an immediate future, stability, peace, and social happiness. That is what we want for our people.
The United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees in Venezuela, Roberto Mier, clarified on Monday that migrants leaving the country should not be classed as refugees and that the agency has never described them as such. They'd rather be called economic migrants, even though there are many different situations. He explained in an interview with our correspondent Madeleine Garcia, posted on Twitter.
We can find different categories and situations. There are economic migrants, migrants related to binational families. When the situation is good in Colombia, they move to Colombia. When they are in Venezuela, they go to Venezuela. We have people that are crossing the border every day just to go shopping. There are people who are studying in the other side. Yesterday, for instance, I met Colombian people who are studying their postgraduate here in Venezuela. So they cross because maybe it's cheaper or maybe more convenient. You have a little bit of everything, a mixed population. That is why I say that it's hard to put a name in just one word to those who are migrating right now.
We'll take a short break now. Join us again after this look at what our multimedia colleagues are reporting. Welcome back. The electoral authorities in Cuba have announced the results of Sunday's elections to the Assembly of Popular Power. Almost 7.4 million voters took part. That's 83% of the electorate. Our correspondent in Cuba, Laura Prada, sent this interview with the president of the National Electoral Commission, Alina Balseiro.
Very early on Sunday, we started the elections for Provincial Assembly members and National Assembly deputies.
It was a long, hard day of work with massive participation of citizens. We released information at Monday's press conference to say that more than 7 million Cubans voted, which is 82.9% of the population. We still need to report the final results. This time we had 24,470 polling stations and people were allowed to vote in any of them. We still have to evaluate this process and share the conclusions afterwards. Apart from the huge attendance, organization and discipline and respect for authorities were another positive thing. Also, the quality of the valid votes. That says a lot for our people when attending elections. They voted voluntarily, secretly and directly, and showed their support for the deputies and for our assemblies.
And it was a busy start to Sebastián Piñera's second term in office. The president of Chile revamped his police force following the unexpected resignation of the general director of the police.
With the official photograph for the press, the first working day of the government of Sebastián Piñera began. The day also marked the resignation of the Carabineers director Bruno Villalobos and Intelligence General Gonzalo Blu, amid two huge scandals including fraud by the National Police and the failure of Operation Hurricane against Mapuche people.
I thank ex-General Police Director Mr. Bruno Villalobos for his services. According to ruling legislation, Director General Inspector Julio Piñera will take office from now on.
The announcement came during the protocol reception on Monday. The new right-wing government promised dramatic modernization of the police forces.
Later, we will let you know the President's idea of deeply modernizing the institution to strengthen police forces. That is our promise.
What is clear here is that the institution is in deep crisis after it was revealed that there was proof of manipulation of the media during Operation Hurricane. Also, intelligence reports were faked.
They are not meticulous when handling evidence, and the responsible ones must be sanctioned because this was bad and unpleasant for the institution.
Deputies from Frente Amplio went to Palacio de la Moneda and sent a letter asking for details of the announced measures and calling for the resignation of some police officers.
We won't settle for this. We need them to investigate. First, money misuse, and second, the abuse inside the police department, especially in Operation Hurricane. We also want to know about the repression of protesters.
This is how the right wing returned to office, with clear economic priorities such as tax reduction for companies, but also with doubts around social demands and the need for judicial guarantees for native people, who won't be satisfied with police dismissals alone.
And the streets of Chile's capital of Santiago were taken over by elderly and disabled Chileans. They were demanding lower transit fares and better pensions at a demonstration called the March of the Canes. The protesters say they will be making demands for the newly sworn-in president, Sebastián Piñera.
We want them to allow us to access the metro with less difficulty than we currently have. This is our primary objective in this first march. We're going to start demanding things because really, it is the moment for change.
The pensions are really low. No one can live off of 125,000 pesos. No one. The rich will always be richer and the poor will always be poorer.
And Bolivian President Evo Morales called on Chile to open up a dialogue on the border dispute issue. The matter is scheduled to go before the International Court of Justice in a few days. Bolivian negotiators are scheduled to deliver oral arguments at the ICJ regarding the country's claim to sovereign access to Chile's Pacific coast on March 19. The Bolivian government filed a lawsuit in the ICJ in 2013 demanding the return of 400 kilometers of coastline that were seized by Chile during the Pacific War.
I have a lot of confidence that Chile will invite us, will convene us to restart the corresponding dialogue. With this request, we will all win. There are no losers. It's my great desire that our people win. And when there is will, when we think of our region and our integration, when we think of peaceful solutions, everything is possible. Nothing is impossible.
Justice Adrian Dudley Saunders, a citizen of St. Vincent and the Grenadins, has been appointed president of the Caribbean Court of Justice with effect from July. Saunders was appointed a judge of the CCJ in 2005. CARICOM leaders confirmed his appointment as president at the regional heads of government meeting in Haiti in February. The Caribbean Court of Justice is the final court of arbitration for several Caribbean countries. Others, like Trinidad and Tobago, where the CCJ is housed, still use the Privy Council in London. The United Nations has warned that fish stocks in the Caribbean are dwindling because of illegal fishing. The UN Food and Agriculture Organization says up to 30% of fishing is illegal, mostly by fishing fleets from Asia and Europe. That is causing a reduction in most fish species, which is robbing the region of $750 million every year in fishing revenue. It warns the lack of regulation is hurting food security and the oceanic ecosystem. In Grenada, the underwater volcano known as Kikimjeni is seeing increased activity. The National Disaster Management Agency, NADMA, increased the alert level from yellow to orange. Kikimjeni is located 8 kilometers from Grenada's north coast. It releases gases, which can be extremely dangerous for passing ships. The alert requires ship captains and other marine operators to stay at least 5 kilometers away from the volcano. Eruptions are common and usually last a few days before it becomes dormant again. We'll be back soon after this break. Let's take a look at what our multimedia team reports.
In the last hour, the news has filtered through to this community that Bobby Sands has died after 66 days of hunger strike.
I declare that Bobby Sands has been duly elected to serve as a member for the third constituency.
Thanks for joining us again. A failed assassination attempt has been made on the Palestinian Prime Minister. Here's a look at that story and other headlines around the world.
Palestinian Prime Minister Rami Hamdalla's convoy has been attacked on his way to Gaza Strip. Hamdallah was reported unharmed in the blast, but several other people were injured. An explosive device detonated as his convoy passed through the Beit Hanun border. The office of the Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas has released a statement claiming that Hamas were behind the assassination attempt. An outbreak of Lassa fever has claimed at least 110 people in Nigeria since the beginning of the year, according to the World Health Organization. Lassa fever belongs to the same family as Marburg and Ebola. The WHO has said the epidemic has reached record highs this week.
We are recording an outbreak that is unprecedented. We've not had it like this before. As at the end of February this year, we have had the number of positive cases far more than the total number of positive cases we had in 2017.
Oscar Groening, known as the bookkeeper of Auschwitz for his involvement in the Holocaust, has died at the age of 96. He was sentenced to 4 years of prison in 2015 for his role in the murder of over 300,000 people at the Auschwitz concentration camp in Germany. He was one of the last people to be convicted of Nazi genocide. Clashes broke out between demonstrators and police as hundreds of pro-Kurdish protesters marched through Westminster in London, demanding an end to Britain's arms sales to Turkey. They also asked for the international community to condemn Turkey's involvement in Afrin. The protest comes as the Turkish military enters the northern Syrian town of Afrin with a view of neutralizing the local People's Protection Units, or YPG.
And we have breaking news this hour. U.S. President has fired Secretary of State Rex Tillerson. Mike Pompeo, director of the CIA, will become the new Secretary of State. In a tweet, the president thanked Tillerson for his service and said Pompeo will do a fantastic job. We will be bringing you more on this developing story throughout the day. And with this, we've come to the end of this morning news brief. This and many other stories, you can find them on our website, telesurtv.net/English. And you can join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For Telesur English, I'm Carla Gonzalez. Thank you for watching.